The story of Molech, a name shrouded in fear and mystery, has often been interpreted through the lens of ancient rituals and dark mythology. Yet, the biblical truth behind Molech reveals a far more complex and disturbing reality, one deeply rooted in the history of ancient Israel and surrounding nations. Molech, often associated with child sacrifice, was not a god who demanded blood in the way many might think. In the Bible, the name Molech is mentioned in the Old Testament in connection with a practice that God explicitly condemned. Molech, according to biblical texts, was a pagan deity worshipped by the ancient Ammonites, and his worship involved rituals that were utterly abhorrent to the Israelites. The Bible mentions Molech in several passages, particularly in Leviticus, 1 Kings, and Jeremiah, warning the people of Israel against the practices of idolatry and child sacrifice associated with this god. The truth of Molech's worship, as revealed in these texts, is stark and chilling. The most notorious ritual was the offering of children as sacrifices to Molech, a practice condemned by God as an abomination. In Leviticus 18:21, the Israelites are explicitly forbidden from giving any of your children to Molech. And in Leviticus 20:5, God declares that anyone who sacrifices their children to Molech is to be put to death. The Bible makes it clear that this practice was a severe sin, one that led to God's judgment against the people who engaged in it. Molech's image was often depicted as a monstrous figure, sometimes made of bronze, with a large hollowed-out torso where a fire was kept burning. The sacrificial ritual involved placing children in the outstretched arms of this idol, where they would be consumed by the flames. This gruesome act was believed by some to secure blessings, favor, or prosperity for the people, a belief that was rooted in the ancient Near Eastern cults of fertility and appeasement. The worship of Molech was not unique to the Ammonites, but spread to other surrounding cultures, including the Phoenicians, where similar practices were condemned in biblical texts. The Bible's condemnation of Molech worship is clear. It is a form of idolatry that violates the sanctity of life and directly opposes God's commands. The practice of child sacrifice was an abomination, an expression of the deepest form of moral corruption and spiritual rebellion. It was a ritual that, in the eyes of the Israelites and biblical prophets, reflected the darkest aspects of humanity's sinful nature, using innocent lives as bargaining chips to manipulate divine favor. The truth of Molech, therefore, is not about a divine being demanding sacrifices, as some myths would have it. Rather, it is a tragic reminder of how human beings, in their desperate attempts to secure prosperity or favor, can distort their understanding of God and fall into practices of extreme evil. In the ancient world, the worship of Molech was one of the most depraved forms of idolatry, and it became a symbol of everything that went wrong when people abandoned the true God for false gods, whose demands were as destructive as they were irrational. Over time, the worship of Molech faded from the historical record as the ancient civilizations that practiced it fell or were absorbed into others. Yet the biblical record remains, a testament to the moral clarity of God's laws against such practices. The prophets, like Jeremiah, decried the abominable acts associated with Molech worship, calling the people to repentance and warning them of the consequences of turning away from the one true God. In Jeremiah 32:35, the prophet speaks of the idolatry practiced by the people of Israel, stating, "They built the high places of Baal in the valley of Ben Hinnom to sacrifice their sons and daughters to Molech, though I never commanded them, nor did it enter my mind that they should do such a detestable thing." This passage underscores the fact that the worship of Molech was a perversion of God's intent for his people and their relationship with him. Today, the name Molech is remembered not as a deity, but as a symbol of human depravity, a stark reminder of the ways in which the human heart, when turned away from the true God, can fall into idolatry and destruction. The biblical truth about Molech's worship is not just a historical account, but a warning that when we stray from God's commands, we can create systems of evil that harm the most vulnerable among us, all in the name of misguided belief or manipulation. The truth about Molech is clear. He was not a god who demanded blood. He was a false idol, created by human hands and hearts, reflecting humanity's darkest impulses. The Bible condemns not only the practice of child sacrifice, but also the worship of any god or idol that seeks to manipulate or destroy life. The story of Molech serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of idolatry and the importance of holding fast to the sanctity of life, as taught in the Scriptures.